So we started out with some sand art, and you may have seen it for Eurovision. There was a lady, I think in 2009, who won Eurovision by doing sand art. She's from Crimea, or like the Ukraine, and just amazing what she does. I didn't pick her piece. This one kind of went along because we're going to talk about Abraham, so it kind of was kind of the mood for that. But it was very interesting with the sand, and we'll get to that. So that was sand art, and there's lots that you can see. So I wanted to talk today. My dad and I have been going through the book of Jasher, and it is very interesting because it talks about Abraham. And it fills in a lot of things, and it describes a lot of things that is just really, really interesting. And it led to something. So we're going to go over that today. And where we're going to start right now is in Jasher 8, and it says, "And it was in the night that Avram, or Abraham, before he became Abraham, was born, that all the servants of Tarak and all the wise men of Nimrod and his conjurers came and ate and drank in the house of Tarak, and they rejoiced with him on that night. And when all the because Abraham was born." Or it says Avram is the Hebrew name, Avram.
What's the book of Asher? Jasher.
It's one of the books that they took out of the Bible, and it's always been in the Bible up till about 150 years ago. They took them out. And so what this does is it talks about Abraham, and so they all go over to Abraham's dad's house, and they're all there, and they're all celebrating. "And when the wise men and conjurers went out from the house of Tarak, they lifted up their eyes towards heaven that night to look at the stars, and they saw, and behold, one very large star came from the east and ran in the heavens. And he swallowed up the 4 stars from the 4 sides of the heavens. And all the wise men of the king and his conjurers were astonished at the sight, and the sages understood this matter, and they knew its importance. And they said to each other, 'This only betokens the child has been born of Tarak this night, who will grow up, be fruitful, multiply, and possess the earth, he and his children forever.' And we know that that is true. 'And he and his seed will slay great kings and inherit their lands.' And the wise men and conjurers went home that night, and in the morning all these wise men and conjurers rose up early and assembled in an appointed house." They didn't like this warning. "And they spoke and said to each other, 'Behold, the sight that we saw last night is hidden from the king. It has to be made known to him. And should this thing get known to the king in the latter days, he will say to us, Why have you concealed this matter from me? And then we shall all suffer death. Therefore now let us go tell the king the sight which we saw and the interpretation thereof, and we shall then remain clear.'" So they're going to go and they're going to tell the king that this child is going to come and defeat him, or his people, eventually. And in verse 16, it says, "And now therefore," the king says, after he hears what these guys have to say, he says, "And now therefore give me the child." And is that not what happened when Jesus was born and Moses was born? And right away, Satan finds a way to be able to get rid of the child before it can become a threat to his darkness and his kingdom. "And so now therefore give me the child, that we may slay him before his evil springs up against us. And I will give you for his value your house full of silver and gold." And so he goes, or he brings Abraham's father to him and says, "I will give you silver and gold if you will give up your child and have him killed." So already what happens in verse 20 and 23 is Abraham's father comes, but he comes with a parable for the king. He is ready for this, and he says to the king, "Give unto me," or he says, this guy came along and he said to me, "Give unto me the great and beautiful horse the king gave you, and I will give you silver and gold and straw and provender for its value. And I said to him, Wait till I see the king concerning your words, and behold, whatsoever the king says, that I will do." So he says to the king, "My master and king, behold, I have made this thing known to you today, and this advice which my king will give to his servant, and I'm going to follow it." So the king has given Abraham's father this wonderful horse, and someone has come along and said, hey, I'll give you silver and gold for it, just give up the king's horse. And he said to the king, or to the guy, well, I'll just check with the king, see what he has to say. So he's telling the king this story, and the king heard the words of Abraham's father track, and his anger was kindled, and he considered him in the light of a fool. So he figured that Abraham's father was a fool to give up this beautiful horse that he gave him for silver and gold, but he should just be able to give up his son and let him die for silver and gold. Didn't kind of go together. Anyway, in 26 it says, track says, I beseech you, my master and king, what is this which you did say unto me, saying, give your son, that we may slay him, and I will give you silver and gold for his value. What shall I do with silver and gold after the death of my son? Who shall inherit me? Surely then, at my death, the silver and gold will return to the king who gave it. Right? So he's saying, if I don't have a son, I don't have anything, right? So the king gets extremely angry over it all. And in the end, what happens is Abraham's father takes a child of one of his servants, and he gives it to the king, and tricks the king to say that this is Abram or Avram, and they kill that child instead. And there is a scripture that says that he will give someone in our place. And that's exactly what happened in this case with this child. And he definitely did that there. And Abraham was concealed with his mother and a nurse in a cave for 10 years. And the father brought them provisions monthly. And after 10 years, Abraham came out of the cave, and what happened was he then went to Noah and his son Shem, and he remained with them, and he learned the instruction of Yahweh and his ways. And Abraham was in Noah's house for 39 years. And Abraham knew Yahweh from the age of 3 years old, and he went the ways of Yahweh all the way until his death. He went that way. There was a time in there, and it talks about it in here, where Abraham considered worshiping the sun. And then the sun went down and it disappeared. They went, well, that can't worship that. And then he decided he was going to worship the moon. And then that disappeared. There is a part in there that does talk about that. Now, Abraham's father, Terach, the king, and all of his household were the first to serve gods of wood and stone after the flood, I guess. And it says that the generations, the people had evil in their hearts. That's where it was. And as a matter of fact, Abraham's father had 12 idols of wood and stone in his house. And it didn't make Abraham very happy. But anyway, as we know, then the Tower of Babel is built. And it is built because they figure they're going to get to heaven and knock God off of his throne, which is no different than what people say today. And if we look at Jasher 9:21, and all the princes of Nimrod and his great men took counsel together. And they said, let us build ourselves a city, and in it a strong tower, and its top reaching heaven, and we will make ourselves famed, so that we may reign upon the whole earth, in order that the evil of our enemies may cease from us, that we may reign mightily over them, that we may not become scattered over the earth on account of their wars. And they all went before the king, and they told the king these words, and the king agreed with this affair, and they did so. So off they went, and they found some land that they liked, that they were going to build their big tower. And in verse 26, and all these people and all the families, they divided themselves actually into 3 parts. The first said, we will ascend into heaven and fight against him. And the second said, we will ascend into heaven and place our own gods there and serve them. That's a nasty one. And the third part said, we will ascend to heaven and smite him with bows and spears. That would be a foolish one. And Elohim knew all their works and all their evil thoughts. Not just their actions, but their thoughts. I was thinking about this where when we first were talking, years ago about our words, and do you remember those days when we walked around and, oh, I rescind that in Jesus' name, oh, I rescind that in Jesus' name, oh, I rescind that in Jesus' name. And, I mean, we still do that when we get out of step with God. If you have to rescind a lot of words one day, you know you're not in line with God. You know, you're not on the right thought pattern. But you know, God wants us to rescind or to call on the blood of Jesus against those thoughts that Satan keeps planting in our mind. Use the blood of Jesus against the thoughts. So Elohim knew all their works and all their evil thoughts, and he saw the city and the tower which they were building. And when they were building, they built themselves a great city and a very high and strong tower. And on account of its height, the mortar and the bricks did not reach the builders in their ascent to it until those who went up had completed a full year. Yes, baby, it was big. And after that they reached the builders and gave them the mortar and the bricks. Thus was it done daily. And behold, these ascended and others descended the whole day. And if a brick should fall from their hand and get broken, they would all weep over it. And if a man fell and died, none of them would look at him. Because, of course, he wasn't getting the job done, right?
He was dead.
Yeah. And Yahweh knew their thoughts. And it came to pass when they were building, they cast the arrows toward the heavens, and all the arrows fell upon them, filled with blood. And they saw them, and they said to each other, surely we have slain all those who are in heaven. See, we can get very deceived in our ways when we think we can figure it out and we're better than God. We get pretty deceived, right? So that's what they decided. But they were imagining in their hearts all kinds of things that were wicked as well. It was started in their heart. All the imaginations and the thoughts, right? It starts in your heart. So, is that not what everybody thinks today? We're going to live forever, but we're not going to do it God's way. If you hear anybody's plans or different groups or religions, they all have a way there, but it's certainly not through the law and commandments of God. That is what they're trying to get rid of. Does not man mock God every day? And what is in our heart? What's in our mind? What's in our thoughts? And what are our plans? Are our plans devised from the world around us? From the desperately wicked heart that we're born with, and that Satan keeps feeding us thoughts, those lofty thoughts that we can do it on our own, that we need to do it on our own, that somehow we're strong when we do it on our own. Which are, our lofty thoughts, Satan's lofty thoughts, those lofty thoughts, they're not very lofty at all. But they're only dredged up from the pit. They don't come from a lofty place, they come from below. And Jesus was tempted with Satan's lofty thoughts, was he not? You are a son of God. What thoughts does Satan tempt you with that you already have as a son of God? Remember with Jesus, he said, oh, you can have all these lands. Well, Jesus had all that and more. But Satan makes it sound like it's a new thing. It's a new thing. And he's going to do something. And it's nothing but mockery and manipulation. So what thoughts does Satan tempt you with that you already have, on all these things he tempts you with, that you already have as a son of God? And far more than that. What lies is Satan telling you to lead you away from that narrow path of life? In Jasher 9:35-39, we find out what happens to the lofty thoughts of Nimrod and all the people. And Yahweh smote the 3 divisions that were there at the Tower of Babel. And he punished them according to their works and designs. Those who said, we will ascend to heaven and serve our God, became like apes and elephants. And those who said, we will smite the heaven with arrows, Yahweh killed them, one man through the hand of his neighbor. So they killed each other. And the 3rd division of those who said, we will ascend to heaven and fight against him, Yahweh scattered them throughout the earth. And those who were left amongst them, when they knew and understood the evil which was coming upon them, they forsook the building, and they also became scattered upon the face of the whole earth. And they ceased building the city and the tower. Therefore he called the place Babel, for there Yahweh confounded the language of the whole earth, and behold, it was at the east of the land of Shinar. And as to the tower which the sons of men built, the earth opened its mouth and swallowed up 1/3 part. And a fire also descended from heaven and burned another third. And the other third is left to this day. And it is of that part that is aloft, and its circumference of the top, which is going to be smaller than the bottom, is a 3-day walk to get around it. And many of the sons of men died in that tower, and people without number. And there was hundreds of thousands of people that went to build that. So they thought that they had all these lofty thoughts, and Satan was telling them this was a good thing to do, and it just really didn't. It didn't work out that well, didn't work out that well. So everybody was scattered out throughout all the earth. So that just gives us a little background. Like, I'm just trying to give you a little background of where we're going. So we're going to go now over to Jasher 11:32. And what happens here is Abraham, he called out and said, "Woe unto my father and this wicked generation, whose hearts are all inclined to vanity, who serve these idols of wood and stone, which can neither eat, smell, hear, or speak." So what idols do people worship today that cannot eat, smell, hear, or speak?
Money.
Money is a very good one.
Cars,
Homes.
people, movie stars.
Well, they can speak.
Well, that's true.
Yeah, I hope they can.
Not very well, but we can.
Yeah, neither
Not
eat,
God's word.
smell. Yeah, that's true. Not God's word. Hear or speak. Who have mouths without speech, eyes without sight, ears without hearing, hands without feeling, and legs which cannot move. Like them are those that made them and that trust in them. He was not very happy. And we see that he's just not happy with his father and all the household. So you can see where these people are going. And then we go over to 58:61. Do you not know, or have you not heard, this evil which you do, our ancestors sinned therein of the days of old? And the eternal Elohim brought the waters of the flood upon them and destroyed them all, and also destroyed the whole earth on their account. And will you and your people rise up now and do unto this work in order to bring down the anger of Yahweh Elohim of the universe, and to bring evil upon you and the whole earth? Now therefore put away this evil deed which you do, and serve the Elohim of the universe, as your soul is in his hands, and then it will be well with you. And if your wicked heart will not hearken to my words, so a wicked heart, right? Will not hearken to my words, to cause you to forsake your evil ways and to serve the eternal Elohim, then you will die in shame in the latter days. And this is what happens with Nimrod. They die in shame. You, actually, and his father too, there was a certain situation there. You and your people and all who are connected with you, hearing your words or walking in your evil ways. And when Abraham had ceased speaking before the king and the princesses, Abraham lifted up his eyes to heavens, and he said, Yahweh sees all the wicked, and he will judge them. So he has made it very clear that this is not the way of God, and he's told his father's household and the princes and the kings, and he's told them all, this is not going to bring you any joy. And then we find out that they're not so happy about this. They don't like that he said this. Now, I'm saying Abraham, but at this point he's not Abraham, right? He's Abram or Avram, A-V-R-A-M in Hebrew. And so, what happens in Jasher 12 verse 1, and when the king heard the words of Avram, he ordered him to be put into prison, and he was there for 10 days in prison. So they put him in prison, and then in verse 30, and the king says to the princes and sages, have you heard what Abraham the son of Terach has done to his father? Because he actually destroyed all of the idols, and then said that they all fought each other, but he had them destroyed. Thus he has done to him, and I ordered him to be brought before me, and thus has he spoken. His heart did not misgive him, neither did he stir in my presence. And behold, now he is confined to prison. And therefore decide what judgment is due this man who reviled the king, who spoke and did all these things that you heard. And all of them answered the king, saying, the man who reviles the king should be hanged upon a tree. But having done all the things that he said, and having despised our gods, he must therefore be burned to death, for this is the law in this matter. So the king's servants, they kindle a fire both night and day in a brick furnace, and they do it for 3 days and 3 nights. And about 900,000 men, you know, you get these Bible movies and a few people show up. I like that. Anyway, about 900,000 men stood opposite of the furnace to see Abraham. Because they wanted to, I guess they thought this was a good idea, you know, kind of like the Romans. Let's go see somebody killed. I don't know. Anyway, they all showed up. Maybe not much happened in town. I don't know. But anyway, 900,000 people, yeah. So they all go to see Abraham, and then there's women and children on roofs and towers. So that's just the men, was just that number. When Abraham comes out, the conjurers of the kings and the sages see Abraham, and they reveal then at this point, hey king, you see this guy here? I think he's around 50, yeah, he's 50. They go 50 years ago today, like about 50 years ago, this was the child that the great star swallowed up the 4 stars. And the king's like, no, really, yeah. So they bring in Abraham's father again and go, hey buddy, you know, really, what's going on, right? And they bring him before, and the father lies. And he tells the king that it was his eldest son, Haran, that had advised him to trick the king and send a different child instead of Abraham. So now, just so you know, Abraham's older brother, Haran, is the father of Sarah, Abraham's wife-to-be. Okay? And she was born to Abraham's older brother when the older brother was 42 years old. And Abraham was 10 at the time. So just to, that's a bit of trivia. Okay, so now we're going to go to Jasher 12, 18, and 19. And it says, and Haran at the time felt inclined to follow the ways of Abraham. So at this time when all this is going down, he felt inclined to follow the ways of Abraham. But he kept it within himself. He didn't tell anybody or go around saying anything. And Haran said in his heart, behold, now the king has seized Abraham on account of these things which Abraham did. And it shall come to pass that if Abraham prevails over the king, I'm going to follow him. But if the king prevails, I'm going to follow the king. I think that has something to do with that double-mindedness that we were talking about earlier, right? So where was his heart, right? Where's our heart? Because there's a lot of people talking about a lot of things. Oh, all these times are coming, and we need to have food, and where are we going to go, and how are we going to hide ourselves? Well, today we're going to find out how you have protection. It has to do with your heart. Where's your heart? And that is what's going to protect you. So anyway, we know now where he is. And he's not in a good place. He's in a, but how many times do we do that? Oh, well, let's see. If in the Freedom Church of God, I see that everyone is driving a Ferrari, then I'll come. Because then that means they're being blessed by God. What's the difference? Right? How many times have we heard, oh, well, there's no changes in that church, nobody's changed. Well, there's a lie from the pit of hell. That came from Satan. That's not true. All these accusations come from Satan. And he puts those thoughts in people's minds, and if people are open to speaking them, then they speak them. And they accuse us of all kinds of things. But Satan is the accuser of the brethren. We're not to be accusers. So, is this not what Satan tells us every day? See, that didn't work out. If it works out that way, you want it, and then it's okay. Then it's okay. That guy's okay, or this organization must be good because I got what I wanted. So that must be where God is. But if it doesn't work out that way, the way you planned, the way my way worked out, then, okay, well, it can't be of God then, because I didn't like it. I didn't get what I wanted, right? It can't be happening. It can't be right because it didn't make me feel good. And that's what happens. So that's where his big brother is in his heart. He's willing to, see which way it goes, and he's going to go with the guy that's standing. Not truth, not God. So in Jasher 12:22, it says, "The king's servants took Abraham and his brothers, and they stripped them of all their clothes except their lower garments which were upon them, and they bound their hands and feet with linen cords, and the servants of the king lifted them up and cast them both into the furnace. And Yahweh loved Abraham and had compassion over him, and Yahweh came down and delivered Abraham from the fire, and he was not burned. But all the cords that were binding him were burned, while Abraham remained and walked about in the fire. And his big brother Haran died when he was cast into the fire, and he was burned to ashes, for his heart was not perfect with Yahweh." So he had that double-minded heart. And when we read this, I was like, okay, this is how we are going to stay in God's arms of safety in the end times. No matter what comes our way, it is a clean heart. It is our heart. "And those men who cast the brother into the fire, the flame of fire spread over them, and they were burned, and 12 men of them died. And Abraham walked in the midst of the fire 3 days and 3 nights, and all the servants of the king saw him walking in the fire. And they came and told the king, saying, Behold, we have seen Abraham walking about in the midst of the fire, and even the lower garments which are upon him are not burned, but the cord that held his hands has been burned off. And when the king heard their words, his heart fainted, and he would not believe them. So he sent other faithful princes to see the matter. And they went and saw it and told the king. And the king rose to see it, and he saw him walking to and fro in the midst of the fire. And he saw that Haran's body was burned, and the king wondered greatly." So this is what just very interesting. Now what happens is, he goes and he gets his servants to go and get Abraham out of the fire. And he says, "Make haste and bring Abraham out of the fire, that you shall not die." And the servants of the king again approached to bring him out, and the flames came upon them, burned their faces, so 8 of them died. And when the king saw that his servants could not approach the fire, lest they should be burned, he called him out. "O servant of Elohim, who is in the heaven, go forth in the midst of the fire, and come hither to me." And he hearkened to the voice of the king, and he came out of the fire. So he had to come out on his own. "And when Abraham came out, the king and all his servants saw him coming before the king, and his lower garments were still on, but the cords were burnt off. And the king said to him, How is it that you were not burned in the fire? And Abraham said to the king, The Elohim of heaven and earth, in whom I trust, and who has all in his power, he delivered me from the fire into which you cast me." There you go. He's got the power. Nobody else has the power like him. So we see that. And the word was in Abraham's heart. Because he had studied the word, and he had made a choice, a conscious choice every day to follow Yahweh. And in verse 38, it says, "And Abraham said to them, Do not bow down to me, but bow down to Elohim of the world, who made you, and serve him, and go in his ways. For it is he who delivered me out of the fire, and it is he who created the souls and spirit of all men, and formed man in his mother's womb, and brought him forth into the world. And it is he, Yahweh, who will deliver those who trust in him from all pain."
Yay.
Said it. There you go. And in verse 42, it says that he walked in Yahweh's ways, and he followed his Torah. That's what happened. And the king gives Abraham many presents and servants. He's blessed. This wasn't an easy thing. He just went through the valley of the shadow of death. Like he walked right through it. And when he faced the kings, well, what are our kings? Employers. Maybe it's landlords. Maybe it's the bank. Those are the kings of the earth. And when we face them, do we face them in a way that you face the fiery furnace and know that Yahweh's going to lead you through it? When your heart is right. You don't need plan B, C, D, E, F, G. Satan has this message that he gives that says, but look at the world we live in. There has to be concessions, because look at the world we're in. We have to be with the times. Things have changed. They're different now. God can't expect me to be like Abraham after all. It's different now. Well, really, the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah, when you read in this book, when you read it, you can't be faint at heart when you read what happened in the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah. You did not want to be a traveler in those days that ended up in that city because you died, and it was not a quick death. It was disgusting. And the people were extremely evil. And you can read about it in here if you like. So they all ended in death. So we're going to jump ahead. That kind of establishes where Abraham has come from, some things that have happened to him. And we're going to go ahead. Abraham then goes ahead. He marries Sarah. And when she's 90, she has Isaac, and Abraham's about 100. And we're going to actually go to the point. What I wanted to show in here was just the heart of his brother and how much it affected what happened at that time between Abraham and his brother and where their heart was and what it did. And we're going to talk about, and the fact that he went through a fiery furnace, and we go through fiery furnaces in our life as well, definitely, right? And you know, it's not because these people were perfect, and it's not because they didn't cry, and it's not because they did everything right. They didn't. It's just that grace that Gerald just spoke about is the empowerment to be able to go through these things. And you can have these feelings, you can have those things, but they stick with the Word. They stick with Yahweh in all the way through this. And so we're going to go over to the point now where Abraham is actually, we're going to jump really ahead, is where Abraham's taking Isaac up to be sacrificed. And that's in 22:40 in Jasher. And he's taking him up, and a lot has gone on and things have happened, but I want to go over here. And Isaac, the son of Abraham, was growing up in those days, and Abraham, his father, taught him the way of Yahweh, to know Yahweh, and Yahweh was with him. And when Isaac was 37 years old, Ishmael, his brother, was going about with him in the tent. And Ishmael, and one of the things that I've noticed too by reading this is, you know, they get upset with each other and they get angry with each other and lots of crap goes down, but they all come back together and they dwell in the land together, so there had to be some forgiveness somewhere. And Ishmael boasted to him, to Isaac, saying, I was 13 years old when Yahweh spoke to my father to circumcise us. And I did according to the word of Yahweh, which he spoke to my father. And I gave my soul unto Yahweh, and did not transgress his word, which he commanded my father. And Isaac answered Ishmael, saying, Why do you boast to me about this? About a little bit of your flesh, which you did take from your body, concerning which Yahweh commanded you. As Yahweh lives, the Elohim of my father Abraham, if Yahweh should say unto my father, Take now your son Isaac, and bring him up an offering before me, I would not refrain, but I would joyfully do it. So he is saying, I go ahead, I'd be a sacrifice. I'll go ahead, I'll do it, right? And Yahweh heard the word that Isaac spoke to Ishmael, and it seemed good in the sight of Yahweh, and he thought to try Abraham in this matter. And the day arrived when the sons of Elohim came and placed themselves before Yahweh, and Satan also came with the sons of Elohim before Yahweh. Oh, there's Satan. He's showing up. And Yahweh said unto Satan, Whence come you? And what does he say? You know what he said, right? From going to and fro in the earth, and from walking up and down in it. And Yahweh said, that roaring lion, right? That lion walking around seeing whom he may devour. And Yahweh said to Satan, What is your word to me concerning all the children of the earth? And Satan answered Yahweh and said, I have seen all the children of the earth who serve you, and remember you when they require anything from you. And when you give them the thing they require from you, they sit at their ease. Right? And isn't that what happens? People, you know, some people, they come, they get their stuff, and they go. Right? That's what happens. And they forsake you, and they remember you no more when you give them the stuff. So, I guess stuff isn't what we need to be looking for. Have you seen Abraham, the son of Terach, who at first had no children, and he served you, and he erected altars to you wherever he came, and he brought up offerings upon them, and he proclaimed your name continually to all the children of the earth. And now that his son Isaac is born to him, he's forsaken you. So he's accusing Abraham of forsaking God. Had he forsaken him? No. but he's saying, he's the accuser. And he has made a great feast for all the inhabitants of the land, and Yahweh he has forgotten. For amidst all that he has done, he brought you no offering, neither burnt offering nor peace offering, and he's just going on and on. This is all the things Abraham has not done for you. And Yahweh said to Satan, have you thus considered my servant Abraham? Have you really thought about him? For there is none like him upon the earth, a perfect and an upright man before me, one that fears Elohim and avoids evil. As I live, were I to say unto him, bring up Isaac your son before me, he would not withhold him from me. Much more if I told him to bring up a burnt offering before me from his flock or herds. And Satan answered Yahweh and said, speak then now unto Abraham, as you have said, and you will see whether he will not this day transgress and cast aside your words. Oh, so he's like saying all this, right? He goes, oh yeah, let's see if that really happens. But he's got a plan, right? He's got a plan. So in chapter 23, it says, at that time the word of Yahweh came to Abraham, and he said to him, Abraham, and he said, here I am. And he said, take now your son, your child, whom you love, even Isaac, and go into the land of Moriah and offer him there for a burnt offering upon one of the mountains which shall be shown to you. For there you will see a cloud and the glory of Yahweh. And that's very interesting. He's telling him what he's going to see when he gets there. And so, a whole bunch of stuff goes down, because he's got to get him away from his mother. It says that their souls were very connected. So anyway, we go over now to 19. And it says that together, Abraham, Sarah, and Isaac wept together regarding this request. So, yeah, it's an emotional thing. When you make a decision to follow God, it doesn't mean that it's easy. And you go, yippee-ki-yay. Like,
Yeah.
you think of Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane. He wasn't dancing around going, woohoo! He wasn't doing that. And so everybody that accompanied them also with them on the road wept with them. And Sarah afterwards, she turned away from her son and weeping bitterly, and all her men servants and maidservants returned with her to the tent. And Abraham went with his son Isaac to bring him up as an offering before Yahweh, and as he commanded him. And Abraham took 2 of his young men with him, Ishmael, the son of Hagar, and Eleazar his servant, and they went together with them. And while they were walking in the road, the young men spoke these words to themselves. Very interesting. And Ishmael said to Eleazar, now my father Abraham is going with Isaac to bring him up for a burnt offering to Yahweh, as he commanded. Now, when he returns, he will give unto me all he possesses to inherit after him, for I am his firstborn. So where's his heart?
Not with God.
And Eleazar answered Ishmael and said, surely Abraham will cast you away with your mother, and swear that you should not inherit anything of all his possesses. And to whom will he give all that he has, with all his treasures? But unto me, his servant, who has been faithful in his house, who has served him night and day, and has done all he desired. All that he desired me. To me will he bequeath at his death all that he possesses. So we can see here where we were talking about self-righteousness. Few things going on there. So we know from this that their heart isn't in the right place. Now it says, and now remember, Satan says, yeah, you go ahead, you do this. Abraham, he's going to cave. He's not going to do this. He said that, he said to God. So in verse 25 it says, and while Abraham was proceeding with his son Isaac along the road, Satan came. That's how he thought it wasn't going to work out, because he had a plan. He's got a few plans, B, C, D. He has to have a lot of plans because God's there stopping him. Anyway, Satan came and appeared to Abraham in the figure of a very aged man, humble and of a contrite spirit. How many times have you been told to do something and you change your mind? You know God told you to do it, but you don't do it because someone or something comes in the way. And you think, oh, God mustn't want me to do that. Because let's face it, it was a really good out, and you didn't really want to do it. That it was hard, right? It was a hard thing to do. Well, what is a contrite spirit? Because this very aged man, humble and of contrite spirit, approaches Abraham and says to him, okay, so according to the International Bible Encyclopedia, a contrite heart is one in which the natural pride and self-sufficiency has been completely humbled. The Hebrew and the Greek words often translate contrite, actually meaning crushed, crippled, or broken. And that's why I showed you the sand art. Because in our heart, when we have a cold, warring heart, when we have unforgiveness or we have all these pains we hang on to, does it not feel like in your heart like rocks? Almost like big, heavy weights in your heart? But when we have a contrite heart, all of that has been crushed down, it's been crumbled, it's been broken down to where now it can be like that sand art. And God can make a beautiful picture with a contrite heart, can't He? And He changes it, just like in that sand art. It starts out a certain way and then it molds and goes into another way, right? And He builds and makes this beautiful picture. And He can do that with a contrite heart. So when contrite modifies heart, we get a picture of a conscience that is crushed. When a human spirit stops justifying its wrong choices, awakens to the depth of the evilness that we are born with. We're born with an evil heart. Like God is changing our heart. And we have a song, right? Change my heart, O God, make it ever true. Right? Change your heart. And to humbly accept God's righteousness and to accept His commandments, right? And to repent of sin. A contrite heart offers no excuses and shifts no blame. There's no blame. You don't blame other people. And in Psalm 51, it talks about a broken and a contrite heart. It's a contrite sinner's prayer for pardon. And its example, it was after David had gone in to Bathsheba. So this is what the prayer is of a contrite heart, or a person with a contrite heart. Be gracious to me, O God, according to your loving kindness. According to the greatness of your compassion, blot out my transgression. He is repenting here, right? Wash me thoroughly from my iniquity and cleanse me from my sin. For I know my transgressions. Like He has searched his heart. He knows his transgressions. And my sin is ever before me. Against you, you only, I have sinned and done what is evil in your sight, so that you are justified when you speak and blameless when you judge. Behold, I was brought forth in iniquity, and in the sin my mother conceived me, right? Because we're born that way. Behold, you desire truth in the innermost being, and in the hidden part you will make me know wisdom. Purify me with hyssop, and I shall be clean. Wash me, and I shall be whiter than snow. Make me to hear joy and gladness, and that my bones, which you have broken, rejoice. Hide your face from my sins, and blot out my iniquities. Create in me a clean heart, O God, and renew a steadfast spirit within me. So steadfastness, a contrite heart has steadfastness too, right? Do not cast me away from your presence, and do not take your Holy Spirit from me. Restore me the joy of your salvation, and sustain me with a willing spirit. Someone who has a contrite heart has a willing spirit. Then I will teach transgressors your ways, and sinners will be converted to you. Deliver me from blood guiltness, O God, the God of my salvation. Then my tongue will joyfully sing of your righteousness. Yahweh, open my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. So, you have to do that when you're repenting. You have to ask that your lips can have praise, because you don't always feel like it at that point. For you do not delight in sacrifice. He doesn't delight in penance, that I would give it. You are not pleased with burnt offering. The sacrifices of God are a broken spirit, or a contrite heart, right? Where all those hard things in our heart are broken down to that crushed sand that can be made into that beautiful picture. A broken and a contrite heart, O God, you will not despise. But by your favor do bid to Zion, build the walls of Jerusalem. Then you will delight in righteous sacrifices, and burnt offering and whole offering. and it goes on. So in Isaiah 66 it says, "Thus says the Eternal, heaven is my throne and earth is my footstool. Where then is a house you could build for me?" Like, where's a house you can build for me? So where is the house you can build for God, for Yahweh? Where is the place, he says, that I may rest? So where can he rest? Where can Yahweh rest? You can't build a house for him, he owns everything. "For my hand made all these things, thus all these things came into being," declares Yeshua. "But to this one I will look, to him who is humble and contrite of spirit, and who trembles at my word." Where can he dwell? In your heart. That's where he can dwell, in your heart, in a contrite heart. He can dwell, he who trembles at the word of God. A contrite heart, as in that sand art, right? Yahweh can make a beautiful masterpiece of your entire, of you and your entire life and everyone around you. Okay, so we're going to go to verse 25 here. Okay, it says, so we have this very aged man. He's humble and of a contrite heart or spirit, and he appears this way because he's Satan. So he appears this way, and he approaches Abraham and he says, "Are you silly or brutish that you go to do this thing this day to your child? For Elohim gave you a son in your latter days, in your old age. And will you go and slaughter him this day because he committed no violence? And will you cause the soul of your child to perish from the earth? Do you not know and understand that this thing cannot be from Yahweh? For Yahweh cannot do unto man such evil upon the earth, to say to him, go slaughter your child." And when I went and that man read me the Quran in that shop that I was in that day, and we were talking about, I'll give a little background. I went into a shop and I was looking around because in this shop all the men get served first. And so I was looking around and finally they had all got left. And so the business owner came up to me and said, "Oh, what are you looking at?" I said, "Well, what is that over there?" And it was a poster of the tree of life, and it has Isaac and Ishmael and the tree of who are the righteous and who aren't of that righteous line. It had Jesus and everything in it. Anyway, we got talking, and I said, "Oh, you have Mary," and he had a whole table of crayons. And so he went over and he read me the book of Mary. And so when the men came in to buy stuff, he told them to leave him alone because he was reading me the book of Mary. Anyway, that was very interesting. So now where was I going with this? Okay, I have to go back to this. I went on a rabbit trail. Now I have to come back to this.
We're just giving us background for the...
Yeah, just a sec here. Okay, yeah, got it. And he said to me, well, what God would allow his only son Jesus to be killed? It's exactly what he said. Exactly what's in here. Exactly what Satan said to Abraham. That's what he said. How could this God of yours do this to his own son and have Jesus die? And that's exactly what he said. Same exact thing. He goes, there's no way that God can be good if he could let his children die. And then I read this and I'm like, that's exactly what that guy said in the store. Exactly what Satan said through this man to Abraham. "Do you not know and understand that this thing cannot be from Yahweh? For Yahweh cannot do unto man such evil upon the earth, to say to him, go slaughter your child." And Abraham heard this and knew that it was the word of Satan. Well, the only way he knew that was the word of Satan is because he knew what God asked him to do. He had a contrite heart. He was humble, and he knew what to do. He had love, and he knew God's will and God's way. Word of Satan, who endeavored to draw him aside from the way of Yahweh. But Abraham would not hearken to the voice of Satan. And Abraham rebuked him so that he went away. And Satan returned. And guess what? Now he comes to Isaac. That didn't work. That didn't work, so we're going to go to son. "And he appeared unto Isaac in the figure of a young man." Oh, notice, he comes in a young man now, comely and well-favored. Ooh, wonder if he looks like our prime minister. Has good of hair. Anyway, and he approached Isaac and said unto him, do you not know and understand that now listen to this, your old silly father brings you to the slaughter this day for naught? Now therefore, my son, do not listen nor attend to him, for he is a silly old man. How many times are children told that their parents are silly and they don't know anything? And let not your precious soul and beautiful figure, ooh, now we're talking about his muscles too, be lost from the earth. We wouldn't want his muscles lost from the earth. And Isaac heard this and said unto Abraham, have you heard, my father, that which this man has spoken? Even thus has he spoken. And Abraham answered his son Isaac and said to him, take heed of him, and do not listen to his words, nor attend to him, for he is Satan, endeavoring to draw us aside this day from the commands of Elohim. When you were given a commission, how many times is Satan going to come and try to take you off course? And all seems so logical. It seems so good. And Abraham still rebuked Satan, and Satan went from them. And seeing he could not prevail over them, he hid himself from them. And he went and passed before them in the road. And he transformed himself to a large brook of water in the road. And Abraham and Isaac and his 2 young men reached the place, and they saw a brook large and powerful as the mighty waters. And they entered the brook and passed through it, and the waters at first reached their legs. And they went deeper in the brook, and the waters reached up to their necks. And they were all terrified on account of the water. And well, see, you can be terrified on your journey along the way. And you just call on God. And while they were going over the brook, Abraham recognized that place. And he knew that there was no water there before. And Abraham said to his son Isaac, I know this place in which there was no brook nor water. Now therefore, it is Satan who does all this to us, to draw us aside this day from the commands of Elohim. And Abraham rebuked him and said unto him, Yahweh rebuke you, O Satan, be gone from us, for we go by the commands of Elohim. There's a good life proclamation. We can use those words, right? And it happened the other day. I'm driving Charlene home from school, and all of a sudden I get a stab in my stomach. And I'm literally instantly ready to throw up. And we get maybe 2 blocks, and I'm going to have to pull over. So as soon as I get that stab, I know it's an attack, right? From Satan. It's no logic to it. So I start, the blood of Jesus is against Satan. He must submit. By Jesus' stripes I'm healed. And it kind of eased off a bit. And then I pulled into a garage station, and Charlene got me some water, and I just kept declaring. And then I was like, Father, forgive them. They know not what they do. And I went and drank some water, came out, got in the car, and I was fine. And then when we got home, it happened to Charlene. And Jasmine came home. She wasn't with us. She wasn't anywhere around. And it happened to her later in the night. Soon as we declared, Father, forgive them, they know not what they do, and choose to accept the gift of forgiveness because they don't know what they're doing, it went away. Didn't come around. So Abraham rebuked him, and he was gone. Satan, be gone from us, and we go by the commands of Elohim. And Satan was terrified at the voice of Abraham, and he went away from them, and the place again became dry land as it was at first. Where do I want to go here? Okay. And Abraham went with Isaac toward the place that Elohim had told him. And on the 3rd day, Abraham lifted his eyes and saw the place at a distance which Elohim had told him of. And a pillar of fire appeared to him that reached from the earth to heaven, and a cloud of glory upon the mountain. And the glory of Yahweh was seen in the cloud. And Abraham says to Isaac, my son, do you see the mountain? Which we perceived at a distance, which I see upon it. So he says, I see it. Do you see it? And Isaac answered and said unto his father, I see. And lo, a pillar of fire and a cloud, and the glory of Yahweh is seen upon the cloud. And Abraham knew that his son Isaac was accepted before Yahweh for a burnt offering, because he could see it. So his heart was in the right place. And Abraham said unto Eleazar and unto Ishmael his son, do you see that which we see upon the mountain, which is at a distance? And they answered and said, we see nothing more than like the other mountains of the earth. Because where was their heart? They were all waiting for somebody to peg off so they could get some stuff, right? And their heart was not there. And Abraham knew that they were not accepted before Yahweh to go with them. And Abraham said to them, abide you here with the ass. Well, no, that was a little interesting. Well, I and Isaac my son will go to yonder mount and worship there before Yahweh, and then return to you. And Eleazar and Ishmael remained in the place as Abraham had commanded. It's very interesting. Their heart wasn't in the right place. And Abraham took wood for a burnt offering and placed it for his son Isaac, and he took the fire and the knife, and they both went to the place. And when they were going along, Isaac said to his father, behold, I see here the fire and the wood, and where then is the lamb that is to be the burnt offering before Yahweh? And Abraham answered his son Isaac, saying, Yahweh has made choice of you, my son, to be a perfect burnt offering instead of the lamb. And Isaac said unto his father, I will do all that Yahweh spoke to you with joy and cheerfulness of heart. And Abraham again said unto Isaac his son, is there in your heart any thought or counsel concerning this, which is not proper? So he got him to check his heart. I pray you, O son, conceal it not from me. And Isaac answered his father Abraham and said unto him, O my father, as Yahweh lives, and as your soul lives, there is nothing in my heart to cause me to deviate, neither to go to the right or to the left from the word that he has spoken to you. And that's what we're told. Don't go to the right or to the left. Stay on that path. Neither limb nor muscle has moved or stirred at this, nor is there in my heart any thought or evil counsel concerning this. We're getting to the thoughts. Not just our words that everybody hears. Because, we get really good at our words, don't we? Mm-hmm. They all sound really good. We all say the wish word, and we all say the right words. But, as my children say, when, what does mom say when she's driving and someone does something wrong? I bless you. Right words, but where's the thoughts?
Bless him with a vengeance.
Yeah, bless him with a vengeance, right? Yeah, the other day some girl said something, because I was in the wrong, and I could tell that she told me where to go with a certain word. And I said, oh, so pretty, but yet so ugly. And then I was like, sounds good on the outside, but not so good in the heart. So I had to repent and rescind and forgive and a few things. Yeah, that one bothered me. So it might sound kind of cute, and you might change your words so it all looks kind of okay, but it doesn't mean it is. Like driving today, I told Dad I was going to tell on him today. I said, I'm probably going to tell on you. Anyway, we had a piece of, he opened up the glove box, and we're trying to find a Kleenex because my glasses were dirty. And he finds this little piece of paper in there that has some food in it. And no sooner I'm looking, and he's got the window open, and he litters. He throws it out the window. I said, Dad, you littered. What are you doing? He goes, oh, well, the crows will like it, right? And I said, you mean the crows you want to kill? You're feeding the crows you want to kill? A little while later, he says, well, it just slipped out of my hand. I said, Dad, you're lying. It all sounds real good, but how many times do we do that? I thought about it, and I thought, oh, man, we do something wrong that's pretty minor. It's probably gone already. It's not minor. But then our guilt, instead of laying it down to Jesus, our guilt makes us sin even worse. Lay it down to Jesus. We should have just laid that litter down to Jesus. Anyway, that was funny. I thought that was so funny. Anyway, but I am of Isaac says, but I am of a joyful and cheerful heart in this matter. And I say, blessed is Yahweh, who has this day chosen me to be a burnt offering before him. And Abraham greatly rejoiced at the words of Isaac, and they went on and came together to that place that Yahweh had spoken of. And Abraham approached to build the altar in that place. And Abraham was weeping. So you can be crying. It's okay. You can be crying. And Isaac took stones and mortar until they had finished building the altar. And Abraham took the wood and placed it in order upon the altar which he had built. And he took his son Isaac and bound him in order to place him upon the wood which was upon the altar to slay him for a burnt offering before Yahweh. And Isaac said to his father, bind me securely and then place me upon the altar, lest I should turn and move. So he's even saying, in case I change my mind, right? And break loose from the force of the knife upon my flesh, and thereby profane the burnt offering. Like it wasn't even change his mind. It was in case he moved because of the force of the knife. And Abraham did so. And Isaac still said to his father, O my father, when you shall have slain me and burnt me for an offering, take with you that which shall remain of my ashes, and bring to Sarah my mother, and say to her, This is the sweet-smelling savor of Isaac. But do not tell her this if she should sit near a well or upon any high place, lest she should cast her soul after me and die. And Abraham heard the words of Isaac, and he lifted up his voice and wept when Isaac spoke these words. And Abraham's tears gushed down upon Isaac, his son, and Isaac wept bitterly. And he said to his father, Hasten you, O my father, and do with me the will of Yahweh Elohim, as he has commanded you. And the hearts of Abraham and Isaac rejoiced at this thing. Their hearts rejoiced at this thing, which Yahweh had commanded them. But the eyes wept bitterly, while the heart rejoiced. Interesting, isn't it? And Abraham bound his son Isaac and placed him on the altar, because, they knew it was the will of God, and that God is love, and something was greater than them, greater than they were. At altar up on the wood, and Isaac stretched forth his neck upon the altar before his father, and Abraham stretched forth his hand to take the knife and slay his son as a burnt offering before Yahweh. At that time the angels of mercy came before Yahweh and spoke to him concerning Isaac, saying, O Yahweh, you are a merciful and compassionate king over all you have created in heaven and in earth, and you support them all. Give therefore ransom and redemption instead of your servant Isaac, and pity and have compassion upon Abraham and Isaac his son, who are this day performing your commands. Have you seen, O Yahweh, how Isaac the son of Abraham your servant is bound down to the slaughter like an animal? Now therefore allow pity be aroused for them, O Yahweh. At that time Yahweh appeared unto Abraham and called to him from heaven, and said unto him, Lay not your hand upon the lad, neither do you anything unto him, for now I know that you fear Elohim in performing this act, and in not withholding your son, your child, from me. Well, you know what? He knew he could get through it. It defeated Satan big time. But guess what? Satan's still going to show up here. He's already showed up. And Abraham lifted up his eyes and saw, and behold, a ram was caught in the thicket by his horns. That was the ram which Yahweh Elohim had created in the earth in the day that he made earth and heaven. And Yahweh had prepared this lamb from that day to be a burnt offering instead of Isaac. Way ahead of Satan. And this ram was advancing to Abraham when Satan caught hold of him and entangled his horns in the thicket, that he might not advance to Abraham, in order that Abraham might slay his son. And Abraham, seeing the ram advancing to him and Satan withholding him, fetched him and brought him before the altar, and he loosened his son Isaac from his binding, and he put the ram in his stead. And Abraham killed the ram upon the altar and brought it up as an offering in the place of his son Isaac. And Abraham sprinkled some of the blood of the ram upon the altar, and exclaimed and said, This is in the place of my son, and may this be considered this day as the blood of my son before Yahweh. And all that Abraham did on this occasion by the altar, he would exclaim and say, This is in the room of my son, and may to this day be considered before Yahweh in the place of my son. And Abraham finished the whole of the service by the altar, and the service was accepted before Yahweh, and was accounted as if it had been Isaac. And Yahweh blessed Abraham and his seed on that day. And so we know that they did that. So we know there's things that we go through. And as we go along the way, Satan is going to come in and tell us all kinds of garbage. But we do know that the righteous man may perish, and no man takes it to heart. And the devout man are taken away until, no one understands. For the righteous man is taken away from evil. He enters into peace. They rest in their beds, each one who walked in his upright way. And that's in Isaiah 57. And Isaiah 57 goes on to tell you what happens to those who are lofty. And it will tell you exactly what happens to them there. But our Father in heaven saves those who have a contrite heart. So we're going to say a prayer and end, because it's been quite a while. So we're going to do Psalm 119, we're going to go verse 1. Let's see how far I want to go here. We'll just end with a prayer. I'm going to read from right to left here. So, Father in heaven, we come to you today, and you have said, how blessed are those whose way is blameless, who walk in the law of Yeshua. How blessed are those who observe your testimonies, who seek you, Yahweh, with all their heart. They also do no unrighteousness, they walk in your ways. You have ordained your precepts, that they should keep them diligently. Oh, that our ways may be established, to keep your statutes. Then we shall not be ashamed. When we look upon all your commandments, we shall give thanks to you with uprightness of heart. When we learn your righteous judgments, we shall keep your statutes. Do not forsake us utterly. How can a young man keep his way pure? By keeping it according to your word. With all our heart we have sought you, and now do not allow us to wander from your commandments. Your word we have treasured in our heart, that we may not sin against you. Blessed are you, O Yahweh. Teach us your statutes. With our lips we have told of all the ordinances of your mouth. We have rejoiced in the way of your testimonies as much as in all riches. We will meditate on your precepts and regard your ways. We shall delight in your statutes and not forget your word. Deal bountifully with your servants, that we may live and keep your word. Open our eyes, that we may behold wonderful things from your law. We are a stranger in the earth. Do not hide your commandments from us. Our soul is crushed with longing after your ordinances at all times. You rebuke the arrogant, the cursed, who wander from your commandments. Take away reproach and contempt from us, for we observe your testimonies. Even though princes sit and talk against us, your servants meditate on your statutes. Your testimonies also are our delight. They are our counselors. Our soul cleaves to the dust. Revive us according to your word. We have told of our ways, and you have answered us. Teach us your statutes, Yahweh. Make us understand the way of your precepts, so we will meditate on your wonders. Our soul weeps because of grief. Strengthen us according to your word. Remove the false way from us, and graciously grant us your law. We have chosen the faithful way, and we have placed your ordinances before us, and we cling to your testimonies. O Yeshua, do not put us to shame. We shall run the way of your commandments, for you will enlarge our heart. Teach us, O Yeshua, the way of your statutes, and that we shall observe it to the end, and we shall observe it to the end. Give us understanding, that we may observe your law and keep it with all our heart. Make us walk in the path of your commandments, for we delight in it. Incline your heart to our testimonies, and not to dishonest gain. Turn our eyes away from looking at vanity, and revive us in your ways. Establish your word to your servant as that which produces reverence for you. Turn away our reproach, which we dread, for your ordinances are good. Behold, we long for your precepts. Revive us through your righteousness. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.